You're listening to the No Schedule Man podcast with Kevin Bulmer, exploring real stories and lessons learned with a variety of special guests. To learn more about Kevin and to access other episodes of the podcast, please visit noscheduleman.com and connect and contribute at No Schedule Man on Twitter or Instagram and on Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud, all /No Schedule Man. Thanks for listening and enjoy the No Schedule Man podcast.
I've been known to struggle with reality.
Hi, I'm Kevin Bulmer. Thanks so much for taking some time to join me. I hope you're having a terrific day. After enjoying a week away at the end of August, I feel like I'm fully back into the swing now. Lots of new stuff to report since the most recent No Schedule Man podcast episode with Winnie Anderson a couple of weeks ago. Here's some of the stuff that's happened since then. Couple new videos up on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/NoScheduleMan, including one about dreaming big dreams and empowering yourself to do that by going back and appreciating some of the dreams that have already come true. Go give that a look. And another one where I had a little bit of fun. It's titled, Does Happily Ever After Really Exist? And in that video, I pose a little bit of a fictional scenario. How fictional? You can go and judge. Go have a look for those on the YouTube channel if you like. Musically speaking, got another song blog done, a song called Crushed, which is one of my favorite lyrics that I've ever written. And there's a blog about that up on noscheduleman.com. That song is part of my rock band bucket list project, Mutineer. So you can learn more about that at mutineerband.com. I also got a new updated Captain's Log progress report on how the law of attraction is helping me by trying to move forward to that creative pursuit. There's a video to that, and there's a blog for that over on the mutineerband.com site as well. Some other new blogs up on noscheduleman.com as well. The other new thing that I just actually got done this past weekend is I finally got a new email list up and going. It's the No Schedule Man email VIP group. You can sign up for that at noscheduleman.com/email VIP. You do that, I've got some updates, some resources that I'll share through that email list, some exclusive content that I won't share anywhere else. And as a free gift for signing up to that list, you're going to get a download of my song called Deja Vu. Get an MP3 of that as a thank you for being a No Schedule Man email VIP. So if you get to the website, you'll see the sign up form for that over on the right-hand side, or just go right to noscheduleman.com/email VIP. Everybody wants to be a VIP, don't they? Sure you do. I hope you'll join me there. So what else? Still working on a keynote speech. I will be talking more about that soon. If you need a keynote speaker in 2017, or if you know someone who does, send them to noscheduleman.com to learn a little bit more about me and see if they think I may be a fit. Once I've got the speech done and sort of polished up, I'm still even flailing around with the title a little bit and some of the key points. But once I've got it done, I will be looking for some events to speak at on a complimentary basis. I'm going to want to get some footage for the demo reel for that. You have a suggestion? You have an idea? Do you have somebody that you would like me to talk to? Please feel free to send them my way. My first speech will be very much about my journey and adventures so far, what I've learned, and how I really believe it can help in business and at home. It'll be very much in the personal development vein. It'll be motivational and, I hope, inspirational. Stay tuned. More on that to come. Now, on with today's podcast and my guest, the fabulous Sheila Stevenson. Sheila and I met many, many years ago, and there was just something about the connection that we had that even though years would go by between contact between us, we just knew that we liked and respected each other a whole lot. Certainly, I've always really liked and respected Sheila, and I knew when I got this podcast started that she was somebody that I was going to want to have on here and feature at some point and give an opportunity for her to tell her story. I'm so glad that she took that ball and ran with it, because some of the things that she has to share in this conversation, absolutely incredible and invaluable to anybody that's looking to try to find, in her words, quote, a better way to live. A little bit about Sheila for you. She's an author, speaker, and a human potential life coach. She specializes in emotional wellness and helping people to make the changes that they need to get what they desire out of their life. Now, something that you need to know about Sheila right off the bat is that she endured an upbringing in an abusive home and suffered through abuse of every kind as a child. Now, don't go away. Don't let that scare you off from this conversation. These things are real. Chances are you know somebody that has either suffered through that or maybe is even enduring it right now. And for all I know, maybe that's part of your story. Sheila can help. In our conversation, we do not recount specifics of what happened to her as a child. To do that, I'd like to invite you to read her book because you'll learn a lot more and you'll hear it straight from her. But to understand just how incredible this dynamic woman is, I feel that it's really important for you to know what the environment was like where she grew up. And for heaven's sake, if you know someone who has had to deal with abuse or is dealing with it now, let them know about this conversation so that they can hear Sheila and understand what's possible as life goes forward. I'll tell you a little bit more about Sheila Stevenson and the work that she's doing. As a human potential life coach, she's helping people with emotional health and trauma recovery. She helps people develop healthier personal and family relationships, helps them overcome a variety of traumas, including abuse, and to attain a sense of purpose and to achieve their goals and their dreams. As a speaker, Sheila talks about her story from trauma through the lessons and into joy. Yeah, joy's possible. She's experiencing it now. She talks about resilience, living on a bungee cord. She also speaks on how child abuse affects families, work, and our communities. As an author, Sheila wrote a book called Hope for Survivors of Childhood Abuse. It's now in its second edition under a different title. So in January of 2014, for marketing purposes, she launched that second edition. It's the same book, but it's now called Let Your Light Shine. Learn how to overcome the effects of childhood abuse. The content's pretty much the same, but the first 2 pages include testimonials from survivors, teachers, frontline workers, and even the former Prime Minister of Canada. Some lessons that I got from Sheila from this conversation. Number 1, love. The power of love. The incredible, awesome power of love. Or even just holding on to the idea of love and what it can pull you through. And this is especially true when it comes to learning to love yourself, something I wish I'd learned decades before I did. Love was the answer that Sheila gave to what I thought might be a difficult question for her to answer, but she didn't even hesitate. She answered love. You'll hear that coming up. I was floored when she gave me that answer, but then as I thought about it, and since I've listened back to it, I thought, well, of course. Number 2, shine a light. To borrow a phrase from the second edition of her book, shine a light. If we keep bad things in the dark, they'll remain as they are, unseen, not dealt with, not processed, not prepared for, not discussed, never eliminated. Now, I thought about this a lot after my talk with Sheila, and I realized how much of life this applies to. As a parent, I admit there are things that are less comfortable for me to discuss, but that are just really natural parts about growing up and about the human experience and things that you're going to encounter. Why leave some of that stuff in the dark? It's also true in relationships, with friends, at work. But in order for these things to be processed and dealt with proactively, we have got to put a light onto some of those dark things. So shine the light. And number 3, it's a lifelong journey, learning about ourselves and why we may feel the way we do about certain things. It is really, in my opinion, it's amazing what we can carry around with us without even knowing why. Listen for Sheila's story about why she hated winter for so long. Now, there are a lot of us here in Canada that we don't like winter all that much, but Sheila hated it, and it would throw her into a depression for so much of her life. So listen for that story. She'll tell us what's happened since she realized that, and she realized why she felt the way she did, and then what she did about it. She shared something very profound in this conversation, suggesting it's possible to enjoy a journey that serves us rather than depletes us. It is possible, and it is a lifelong journey. Here's my conversation with Sheila Stevenson on the No Schedule Man podcast. Sheila, if I asked you to describe your journey so far with one word or one phrase, what would you say?
It's been a giant roller coaster with all kinds of highs and lows and bumps and twists and turns.
And how different from the experience of other people do you think maybe that is?
Probably not very much. I think we all I think we all have roller coaster lives to some degree, but like roller coasters, they're all unique.
So how does that compare with how you maybe thought it was going to be a long time ago?
To be quite honest, Kevin, I'm not sure a long time ago that I even gave a lot of thought to how it was going to be. I lived much of my life in survivor mode, attempting to just survive and get through life.
How much of it would you say was in that, if you had to guess?
Oh, childhood, my teen years, probably well into my 50s.
So was it in the 50s? Would it be fair to say that that was the time where you started, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, considering that there might be another way to approach life, or your viewpoint of it?
Yes, actually, interesting you say that, because as a very small child, with my particular background, I had a mantra stuck in my head from a very early age, and it was, there has to be a better way to live. And
where did that come from?
That's a good question. I was up in an old maple tree, and it popped into my head as I was looking over my neighborhood, small town neighborhood in backyards was what I saw at the time. I was there protecting myself because I was afraid, and it was one of my safe places, and I didn't want to go home, and it just came to me as I looked around and I thought about my friends and where they lived and how their mums were always so nice to me and how their dads were just dads. There was nothing kind of perverted about them. And it just came to me, and it stuck with me until my 50s, well into my 50s.
Half a century is a long time to stick with something that is grinding your soul down.
It is, absolutely.
What made you stick with it?
One word, love. I have 3 younger brothers, 2 of them considerably younger than me, that I often had to protect, and I love them dearly. And then, of course, boyfriends that you think you're deadly in love with. And then I married, and then, my first child was born, that marriage ended, another marriage, another child. I love them dearly. It was love of people, the good people in my life. That's what kept me going. And good friends. I still have friends from kindergarten.
Really?
Yep. I do.
I think I'm connected on Facebook to a few of them, but I gotta be honest, that's more of a token thing. They'd probably tell you the same. It's not that I don't wish them well, but we don't get together for regular.
Oh, but we do.
Or do you?
Yeah, we do.
Isn't that a neat thing?
We do get together, yeah. It's amazing.
You must have really taken delight in those friendships at those times, given the environment and the psychology of it that you just described. It must have been a joyous thing to be with those friends back then.
Yes, they were friends from, birth, essentially, until the end of grade 4, when I moved away from that place. But yes, I loved my friends, and it was wonderful to just get outside and be with them and play. And because children live in the moment, you're out there having fun. You're not thinking about what's waiting for you when you get back home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're not leaning into the future that doesn't exist yet, right?
Exactly.
So maybe that was a little part of what you had to come to grips with in the 50s. For somebody who's listening, I know we're floating all over the place here, but this is all going to come together and make sense. So, so just hang with. I thought before we talked, Sheila, I'm going to try and do this a little bit differently. That we're going to start sort of where we are and then go backwards, and because we've already done that a little bit. People will see why. But for now, let's go back to that time where you said things started to change. You said in your 50s. What was it at that time that started to change for you?
Well, there was the loss of a job that I'd had for quite some time, a career actually, through downsizing. And then, getting into business, kind of starting a new life and getting a taste of who I really am. Getting kind of digging into what makes me, me, as opposed to being what I thought I should be or had to be for other people. Because, for the first 19 years of my life, and then even after that to some degree, I was an expert at walking on eggshells. And, being who other people needed me to be at any moment. I was on guard all the time. So the downsizing was actually one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me, because it started the journey of me discovering who I am and where I can fit in the world and what do I have to bring to the world and offer. It was, I didn't understand that at the time, but when you look back, you see these things. And it was a wonderful time. Scary.
Well, absolutely. How did you know at that time how to look for that after going for so much of your life without investigating that process? How did you know to start looking inward and ultimately, who am I and what am I really here to do? Those are big questions.
They certainly are. Well, at that time, my kids were mostly grown up. My daughter was. My son, was in his late teens. So there wasn't the day-to-day childcare after work, before work, all that kind of stuff. So it freed up a little bit of time for me. And I kind of knew what I wanted to do when I was downsized. I just had no idea how to do it, because my level of self-confidence was, as I used to say, somewhere under a snake's belly. Was pretty low. However, I was very passionate about customer service and had been all my life. And I was taught by some really great people about how to treat customers from a very early age. And during my career in the brewing industry, I was serving customers, literally clients, customers, and suppliers from all over the world. And had to learn a lot about, different social norms, different expectations people have in other countries, other societies, and how to respect those and how to honor them and how to serve with success.
Absolutely. So I was listening to you so intently, I forgot to think of a follow-up question. Which is actually a compliment to you.
Well, thank you.
I didn't know about, the brewing industry. I'm male, so you may have told me several times, and I just didn't know about that part of it. But there again, at that point, I know what I wanted to ask you was, I had said a few minutes ago that we were going to kind of start at the end, and we've sort of established where you got to thinking, okay, what am I really going to do? What am I passionate about? Customer service. Let's jump forward a little bit to the present. How would you describe yourself now? Both professionally and personally. Sort of jump right in there without giving you a chance to answer. But
well, a lot's transpired since that time. Mm-hmm. And how would I describe myself now? Oh, I would say that I'm a very happy person. I experience joy almost daily. I mean, of course, there are those events in life that come up that can really knock you down. Like last year, my stepson was killed, and my wonderful beloved aunt, whom I've adored my whole life and who was extremely good to me, passed away as well. So, that was very difficult. However, it didn't impact who I am and my sense now of who I am in the world. It was hard. It was difficult. I grieved for a long time. Essentially, I didn't have time to grieve for my stepson because it was only a month when my aunt had a major stroke and was in the hospital, and this was in California, and I became her caregiver via long distance. So it was very challenging for many, many months. And just as we kind of got all the pieces in place for her long-term care, she died. And so, there was just a lot of shocks in that 1 year. But I got my joy back. And, I'm a happy person. I know who I am. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I love to learn, and I will never stop learning, so I'm always open to learning. Being comfortable in my own skin doesn't mean I know it all. Certainly doesn't mean, that I'm arrogant or overconfident or anything. Arrogance just wouldn't fit on me. But, just looking forward to tomorrow and every day tomorrow.
You talked about how love sustained you through so much of the first part of your life. How much of that was directed at yourself?
From me?
Yeah.
Very little.
And what about in the time since that personal transformation?
Oh, that's been a part of it, is learning how to love myself. Learning how to accept myself and learning how to love myself. I don't know how far back you're going to go, but of course, my history is of humongous childhood abuse of every kind. And the verbal messages that I received, I accepted and lived with those verbal messages until into my 50s when I thought, wait a minute here. I don't want to live what somebody else has told me anymore. That's not me. It feels horrible on me, and I have to change that. I have to change those messages.
How did you know how to do that?
Well,
like after so many years of, and there's a reason why I'm bludgeoning you over the head with this point, because our beliefs and our thoughts and these patterns get so ingrained in our DNA. I'm fascinated by what is it that, despite all that, makes that light go on and tells you to search for something that you hadn't accessed yet through the journey.
I think you hit on it. The light goes on. I've been an avid reader my whole life. Avid reader. Once I got finished all the Nancy Drew books when I was a kid, then I borrowed all my brother's Hardy Boys and, just whatever I can get my hands on, I read. You'll never see me go anywhere without a book or a magazine in case there's quiet time and I need to read. Right? And I've learned just recently that quiet time, I have to honor that too sometimes. But I read and read and read and read, and Napoleon Hill and Robert Schuller and all those big names from way back, and then Tracy, and the names are not coming to mind, but the self-help, the Tony Robbins, all that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
And I read it, and I took it all in and thought, oh, this is fantastic stuff. However, I didn't really embrace it as my own, these messages. I agreed with much of what I read. Some things, no, and I had the good sense to recognize that. I'm not that gullible, so I can sift things. However, it was into my 50s when my mothering responsibilities relaxed. I had more time to explore who I am, and that's when these messages kind of started to hit home, and I started putting the pieces back together. And one day, probably even 10, 15 years ago, I dropped a glass of something in the kitchen. I don't remember what it was. and it broke. And the first thing that popped into my head, oh, you're stupid, you're clumsy, you can't do anything right, which was a message that I'd had all through childhood and my teen years. And I put my hands up in front of me, palms out, and I just said, stop. And I did stop. And I looked at this mess on the floor. I live alone, so I knew who was going to have to clean it up, but that's okay. I said to myself, you're not stupid. And then I thought, wait a minute, that's a negative. Sheila, you're smart. You know what? You got 2 kids who are walking the earth, who are healthy and happy and intelligent. You can't be that stupid. You must be pretty smart. You raised them. You fed them. You taught them. You must be a pretty smart person. And that was a humongous moment for me. That shifted things. And that's when I started paying more attention to those messages and turning them around by rephrasing or reframing, as we say in coaching, by reframing. So without introducing the negatives, you're not stupid, which of course we want to believe, no, I'm not stupid. Well, no, not is double negative, right? But we have to reframe that, and that's what I did, is I'm smart. And I am smart. I may not be the smartest person that ever walked this planet, but, I'm pretty smart. And I'm good with that.
I agree. It's fascinating when that starts to happen. Something that just popped into my mind. It really resonates what you're saying about taking those words and even not reinforcing a negative. I was just away at Disney World last week, and on the door hanger, that you put on the door so that the housekeeping won't come in while you're out. I noticed that instead of saying "do not disturb," and maybe it's like this everywhere, I'm not all that well-traveled recently anyway, it said "privacy, please."
Oh, wonderful.
And I noticed it, and I thought, that's nicer than the "not" and "disturb" are both hard words.
They are.
I know people that would laugh at me for that, but once you start cluing into those things, and even just the single words, they don't even have to be spoken or written. If they pass through your consciousness, they have incredible power, don't they?
They have huge power, yes. Absolutely huge power. And so, when we have that first awareness of becoming aware of something that's not serving us well, and we can take that stop moment and reframe, it's the beginning of a new journey. And we become more adept at it as we go. We don't become perfect overnight. None of us become perfect in this lifetime, but it's the start of a different, a new, a more fulfilling journey through life. One that serves us rather than depletes us.
I'm reminded of some people that I think quite highly of had suggested that I journal. And I remember my immediate reaction to this. This is some years ago now, Sheila. You're asking me to keep a diary? That's for 12-year-old girls, isn't it? I can have a diary. No, not to divert the discussion too much, but I took the advice, and so I started making notes of my thoughts. And didn't realize that I was building some awareness of the thoughts, which is a huge step on its own. But after some time, I realized that I basically I kept noting all these frustrations and realized that I was just creating this, almost daily bitch session of all the things that I wished would change. At some point, that back to where we were again, that light went on. And I don't know how I got the idea for it. Probably like you, because of things that I was reading that just hadn't resonated yet. And so I was focusing and documenting things that were driving me nuts and asking for them to change, and I kept getting more of it. So I thought, maybe I'll change the words, I'll change the message. And I started writing things like, "I'm proud of you, Kevin," or "I love you, Kev." I showed this to my 13-year-old son about a month ago. He started to cry when he saw it. I said, because he's starting to do this. And I'm going to encourage you to think about writing this down for yourself. And when he thought about it, it made him emotional. So I asked him why he reacted like that. And he said, of the way that it makes my body feel and my mind feel, even the way that I'm getting right now, shows you that for some reason, how twisted is it for it not to be natural to send those kinds of thoughts to yourself? But I've hijacked the conversation. After you tend to do this for a while, it's amazing.
Yes.
You start to believe it, don't you?
Absolutely.
Is that what happened with you?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm glad you pointed that out, how your son felt in his body and in his mind, because we are whole persons, and as I say often, there are 5 major components to who we are. We are physical beings, we're mindful beings, hopefully mindful.
Some more than others.
And I mean mental we're thinking beings, right? We are emotional beings, we are spiritual beings, and we are sexual beings. When all of those are in tune with each other, we are whole, and we're connected to the core of who we are. And that's what we present to the world, and that's how we function in the world. When one or more of those is out of sync with the rest, then we're somewhat fractured, and we need to reconnect those. And so in my work with clients, I often, they'll say something because a thought has popped into their head, and I'll say, well, how's that feeling in your body? What's going on right now for you in your body? And, sometimes I wish I could take pictures of the facial expressions, because they're absolutely priceless sometimes. You get that startle, or the oh my God, or the wow, all those different reactions that you can read on people's faces, things that they had not connected to or thought about before. And so they're starting to connect back all the pieces, and they're discovering that they can be whole again.
What's it feel like for you when you get to share in that light going on, that awakening, that aha for other people, and knowing that you are contributing to it?
Oh, it's a fabulous feeling. And I have a cousin who's the same age as me, although she likes to point out that I'm a month and a half older. However, we've been close our whole lives, and she's a very wise woman, and I trust her implicitly. We have wonderful talks, and she said to me one day, Sheila, how can you do this work that you're doing because of what you've been through yourself? Isn't it hard to deal with? And I said to her immediately, I said, no. I said, if you could see some of my clients who come through the door who are slouched over, fearful, all of those negative kinds of things, and then you watch them have at least one aha moment, and I said, their bodies shift, they straighten, their heads come up, their eyes light up. And when they leave, their posture is totally different. I said, you know what? That feeds my spirit. Yeah, I want to do more of that, because that's what somebody did for me, and I know how that feels. So I want to share that and bring that for others.
So you just led into where I was hoping to take us, is that, well, one of the first key steps, in my opinion, is that when you start to recognize and then embrace that sensation and that feeling and the realization of, oh, wow, there is a better way to live. Then the next step, or one of them is, I think, now what? What do I do with it? So maybe we can go back and fill in part of the story of where you were at that point, had a passion for customer service, still trying to figure out what avenue you're going to pursue next. You had some things in mind, you said, but you just didn't know how to do them. So what was the next part of the process like for you? What did you do?
Well, the customer service thing actually started at a very young age. I lived in Montreal, and on the South Shore. And my brother, a year and 3 months younger, had a Montreal Star route. And in the good weather, he used to have to pile them in his wagon because you couldn't carry them; they were too heavy. And in the winter, he used a toboggan. On the worst days of the year, he would get sick. I don't think he ever really was all that sick, but he didn't want to go out because the weather sucked. And so he'd come whining to my, Sheila, can you deliver my papers? And I said, no, but I'm sick. No, you're not. Yes, I am. And back and forth, siblings. And one day he said, he looked at me as I was refusing, and he said, how will the customers feel if they don't get their paper? Wow. And, I forgot about that for many years. And then as a little older teen, and when I was in my teens, I went to work in a Laura Secord shop when I was in high school. And the manager was a lady, a neighbor of ours, actually, and she was very good at training me. And she said, I don't care what you eat while you're here. You make sure all those little piles are nicely done, because it's all about the customer. And when they come in the door, you smile at them, and you do whatever it takes that, whatever they need. And then I worked, a year or so later, I worked at an indoor A&W downtown Montreal. And I'm
smiling because A&W is on my resume as well. Please continue.
Well, there you go. No roller skates were involved. Actually, it was right close to what was then called Sir George Williams University, and the new name of it just escapes me at the moment. But anyways, I learned very quickly that the nicer you were to people, the more attentive you were to their needs. If they didn't have enough, if the ketchup was almost empty, I'd run and get a new ketchup bottle for them, that kind of thing. And I learned very quickly that the better you did, the better I did as a server, the bigger the tips. So there was that payoff. And at the same time, it made me feel good, to look after people and make sure that they got what they needed. During that period of time, though, I never seemed to worry about what Sheila needed.
I was going to ask you about that. Because I'm searching for the right word. Cynical is not the right word, but that side of it you're still the customer service, noble, and you're right. Isn't it amazing how when you are attentive and treat people well, you get more of that back? To be a little bit harder or cynical about it, I guess I would also maybe offer, well, how much of that end is, you're serving. You're constantly serving everybody else's needs but yours. And so now here you arrive at this point in your life where you are re-engineering.
Yes.
And you're looking at what you're passionate about, servicing others, but you're also trying to come to grips with appreciating yourself.
Exactly.
And marrying the two together and going forward into what you've become now. So again, back to that. What were the next steps that you were taking with that love of customer service, and what were the things that you had in your head that you knew you wanted to do, but you just didn't know how? What did you do?
I talked to some people that I trusted and got some ideas and just put together what I thought was important. I wanted to work in the corporate world, and one of my best customers at the time was in the, what do you call it? They're a company that services our heating and cooling needs.
Okay.
And the fellow who hired me, actually, we were at a London Ad and Sales Club meeting. That organization is defunct now. And I had been a member for some time, and went and got my dinner, came and sat down. I always tried to sit with new people, And anyways, this guy came, and he was kind of looking for a place to sit. And I said, well, come and sit with me. So he did. And I said to him, so, my name is so-and-so, and what do you, who are you? What do you do? So he started telling me. And then he started telling me about his frustrations with staff not providing really great customer service.
She's using air quotes, by the way.
And finally, he looks at me and he says, so Sheila, what do you do? And my comment to him was, I really don't want you to feel like a deer in the headlights. However, I train customer service for corporations. And he said, I guess I was meant to sit with you, and I think we need to meet. And they became one of my best clients until their company did some major, huge changes and they stopped the training. But it was unbelievable. I loved it, and the results that we got were fantastic. I know when they sent me to one of their facilities elsewhere in Ontario, when I went back the second time, the fellow said to me, by the way, Sheila, I've got some letters here. Do you want to read them? Sure. So he gave me these letters from customers. They were 8.5 by 11 sheets, typed, single space. They were lined papers, written, both sides, 8.5 by 11. Unbelievable. And I'm reading these, and I'm looking, and finally I said to him, could you run and make me copies of these? So he did. Came back, and I took my highlighter, and I underlined some of the different phrases that customers had addressed that they felt wonderful about. And when I handed it to him, I said, what do you see there? And he said, oh my God, these are customers responding positively to all the things that were concerns for us before we started training. That was a fabulous feeling, fabulous feeling. And you know, when you walk into a room and there's like 20 people sitting around a table, and they all got all their arms and ankles crossed, and they're glaring at you. And most of them were guys who were used to being out on the road doing their thing. And they're glaring at you like, you know, what the heck are you going to do for us, lady? And so within 2 or 3 minutes, I would have them laughing, and I could watch the body language as their arms unfolded. And then they would sit up, and their arms would be on the table, and the ankles became uncrossed. And I thought, okay, gotcha now. Let's keep going. Right?
How would you break that ice? What did you do?
I'm kind of a seat of the pants kind of person often. That's how I function best, and I'm okay with that. Actually, a lot of people say they would like to be able to do that, so I'm very comfortable with that. And it was just in the moment, whatever came up. You know, it might be a crack about the weather or about, you know, darn, I left my muffin on the kitchen table this morning, forgot to grab it before I come out the door. Whatever.
Just being yourself and being real.
Being myself and being real and in the moment.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording about energy and picking that up from each other. And amazing how that happens, isn't it? Because when a group is gathered, and how you describe, you know, with the arms and ankles crossed, you know, what are we going to be told now that we don't know how to do or something
that we
like
already know, and who does she think she is? That, yeah, you could read that on their faces.
Isn't it amazing how you can get an immediate sense of, I'm looking for the right word. You can just get a sense of it. We're okay here. This can be all right. Or, oh, gee, here it comes again.
Yeah.
And you just being you is probably the biggest ingredient in that, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. But you have to have some level of confidence to be able to be aware of the situation.
Sure.
But not let it send you sobbing out of the room, right? You have to handle it.
Yeah, well, to that point, there are so many others, especially in the corporate world, in my experience, that handle it by just bulldozing on through it.
Yes.
And don't even see the need for some sort of engagement, like sincere engagement. But anyway, I digress on that end of it. When I think of the name Sheila Stevenson now, here are the words that pop right into my mind, at least professionally speaking. I'm thinking life coach, speaker,
yes,
author.
Yes.
And what you're describing sounds, I would call that more of a consultant. Is that fair to say? Mm-hmm. So how did
facilitator?
Okay, facilitator is a great word.
And consultant, yeah.
Tell me more, if you would, Sheila, about how how and when speaking, the books, life coaching, how did those pieces start to develop?
Oh, okay. Well, the speaking part, I'm not 100% really sure how that started. You know, way back when I started that customer service training company, people would say, well, could you come and speak to our group about sales, or can you come and speak to them about customer service or whatever? So, you do the coffee network meeting kind of thing, and that sort of developed. I never went high end with my speaking. I allowed myself sometimes to get talked into speaking about topics that were not really my passion. And it took me a while to figure out, there was a lot of angst in that of needing to, well, how do I put this together? What am I going to say? And just getting very uptight about it and I had to one day say, you know what, I don't want to talk about these things because they're not me. That's not where my passion lies. So I learned that N-O period is a full sentence. And I'm not afraid to use it.
My mother will be thrilled when she listens back to this because she has said the exact same thing. And it wasn't until she was well into her years that she finally had to come to grips with that as well. So. Right.
It's a full sentence that we're very good at telling our kids, but not ourselves, not using ourselves as mothers, right? So that was kind of the speaking thing. And then a lot of different things transpired. I ended up closing that company down because I did hire some people. They didn't work out well, let's put it that way. And I became exhausted because I was doing everything. I was doing the sales, keeping in contact with people, doing the training, the facilitating, and the traveling, and putting everything together, all that kind of stuff. And I just got very tired. So a sales position came open, and I took it, and I was there for about 1.5 years when I ended up moving across the pond to the UK, and I was there for about 1.5 years. I came back. Things just didn't go as planned over there, so I came back and essentially had to start all over again. Got back into sales again because an opportunity came up. Learned a lot, but I realized, sales is not really my thing. I know we're all doing sales to some degree all through life. However, as a career, that was not my thing. But doing some reflection during that period of time, asking myself, well, what do you want to do? I realized that there had been 3 times throughout my life that I had the opportunity to take aptitude tests. And every single time the results came, and through different places, by the way, as well. Every single time the results were always exactly the same. 2 results. Each one had 3 parts to it. So the one part was I should be a journalist, a writer, or an author. And the second was I should be a social worker, a psychologist, or a therapist. And now I am a published author, and I'm a certified professional life coach. And now I'm happy doing what I believe what I was sent into this world to do.
So tell me more about that. How does one attack becoming a life coach, let alone handling a book? Let's maybe choose one and tackle it first. Let's talk about the coaching then. Where do you?
Well, actually, the book came first.
Did the book come first? Okay. Well, let's go there. Tell me a little bit about that process.
Okay. So through the brewing company, I was able to access an employee assistance program to finally begin to deal with 19 years of abuse, sexual, physical, verbal, and emotional neglect as well. That's what I lived for the first 19 years of my life, and survived. And so I got into therapy with a wonderful woman. She was absolutely fantastic. And I don't know, I went to see her for maybe a couple of years. I don't remember. And the files are long since gone, so neither one of us remembers. But the last day, she said to me, Sheila, I'd really like to see you write a book. I looked at her and I thought, oh my goodness, my therapist is nuts. She thinks I can write a book.
I was going to say I thought you were nuts, but for a different reason, but I want to see if you cover that reason. So please continue with your story.
Okay.
Sorry, I just
now you have me curious.
I just sort of pushed you off balance. I apologize. That wasn't a fair play.
That's okay. Remember, seed of the pants, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, anyway, she planted the seed, and it took some time for me to, I say she planted it way at the back of my head, and it took some time for that little seed to kind of work its way through and germinate. And finally, before I moved to the UK, we had lunch one day because we'd reconnected on a peer level. My therapy was long over, and we'd reconnected through the Chamber of Commerce actually, so we could be friends, and we were. And we had lunch, and I said to her, "Okay, I will write the book on 2 conditions. You have to write the foreword for it." And she said, "Me? Really?" And I said, "Yeah, you." I said, "It was your idea. I want you." And I said, "I love and respect you, and I would like you to write the foreword." So she did. She never saw a single word of my manuscript, but she emailed me the foreword, which that had me bawling because I thought, wow, that's trust.
She
right?
believed in you.
She believed in me. She was going to put her name and her reputation into a book that she hasn't even read a word about. I was absolutely stunned by that and thrilled at the same time, And I said, the other thing is I need to find, for me, I need to find a redeeming format for the book. I don't personally see a whole lot of benefit in just writing my whole long, pathetic, sad story, and then what? The end, and what do people do with that? Throw it in the garbage? Or, where does it leave the reader? So I need to find a redeeming purpose for the book, whilst telling some of my story so that people know I know what I'm talking about on the subject, and yet there's hope, and you can get through it. And there is a better way to live, right? So one day, I hired a life coach in 2007. I met this wonderful lady, and she, anyways, we connected, and it was through networking, and so I hired her, and we worked through a number of things that I was being challenged by. And at one point she said to me, "So, Sheila, when are you going to write this book?" And I said, "Well, I said, blah, 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 this excuse, that excuse, another excuse, blah, blah, blah." A month later, something major had changed for me. And when she came back, we had our session. At the end of it, she said, "So, Sheila, may I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." She says, "So when are you going to write this book?" And I looked at her, and I did exactly what I did now. I just laughed, and I thought, okay, you got me. That was in the beginning of August of 2008. I said, "You know what? I'm going on a little road trip. I'm going to the Eastern Townships in Quebec and up to Ottawa. And on the way down, I'm going to have my tunes and singing my heart out. But I said, on the way back, I'm going to do a lot of thinking and reflecting. And I'll make my decision when I get back." So when I got back, I quit my job, and then I literally piddled around until January, because how do you write a book? Where do you begin? How do you start? How do you fit all the pieces together? What, right? And it was finally early in January, I think, where somebody I was talking to said, "You know what? Just create a table of contents. What do you want to say to people? Just create a table of contents, and then just go and do it. Your first manuscript's going to suck anyways, and your editor's going to tell you have to rewrite it, but just do it." So that's exactly what I did, and I kind of holed up until from the end of January through, I think it was the middle of May, when the first manuscript went off to my editor. And I kept Kimberly Clark in business, boxes of tissues. It was tremendously cathartic for me. And I had so many aha moments, and so many awarenesses came to light just from writing. So going back to when someone suggested that you have your diary, your journal, there is power in taking thoughts in our head that are real, but we can't capture those thoughts unless we do something with them. And that is to transfer them, down through our jaw, neck, shoulders, down the arm, through the fingers, grab a pen and put it on paper. There is tremendous power in that.
Well, see, now you've touched on what I was alluding to when I suggested that there was maybe a second arm to the "are you crazy" part of the journey when she initially suggested you write a book. And my part of it was going to be, what you described about a half hour ago as, big, humongous abuse of every kind, to volunteer yourself back into the belly of that beast and to throw a flashlight into the dark, dank corners of having lived. These aren't stories. These are things that you endured and moved on from, that, frankly, Sheila, are unimaginable to me. I have things that I'd like to write about from some of my former adventures that I have put off simply because I'm telling myself I don't really know if I want to kind of cast my energy back there. And now I'm thinking about you having to go back and emotionally relive incredibly traumatic experiences. You've already started to answer this question by saying that it was cathartic, and that I guess when you were living that, you weren't the same person that you are now, recounting it and seeing what you were able to draw from it, evolve away from it or into different paths, but then also to your point about the now what, how you could then repurpose that to empower and help others.
Right. Well, first of all, in the process of writing it, I was in a safe place, which I never was in my childhood. I lived at home, if you want to call it home. I lived in a house with my parents and my brothers, but it wasn't safe for me.
Gotcha.
When I was writing, I was in my own home, which I call my sanctuary, and it's what I've created, and it's a safe place. So I was embraced by those walls, for starters, right? And I think part of it was the trust that my therapist had in me, and she said you've survived all the kinds of childhood abuse that there are, and you've come through it. You have a lot to share with others, a lot of hope to give. And she said, and also I'd like a tool on my shelf that I can hand to other clients when they're struggling, that can give them hope. And she bought at least 2 copies. But I'm going to give you an example of one of the things that transpired. It's short. Through the writing process. This one particular thing, all of my life, since I can remember, I hated winter. Now, a lot of Canadians will agree with me, and Northern Americans. However, I hated it with a passion. When the leaves in the fall finally came down off the trees, and all there were these big sticks in the ground, essentially, with nothing fluttering on them anymore, the skies are gray. It's November. It's dull. It's dreary. Yeah, it's horrible looking. I would go into major depression. It was all I could do to drag myself out of bed. I knew I had to. I had children to look after, right? I had children to support. And a good job I didn't want to lose. However, this went on all through my teen years, my adulthood, and I never understood it. And then when spring would come, it was like I was doing the Snoopy happy dance,
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to figure out what that was. SAD, so seasonal affective disorder. So get lots of light, Sheila, get lots of light. That helped somewhat. But when I was writing the story about being 4, 5, 6 years old on the snow-covered lawn of the neighbors across the street, helping my friends build a snow fort, when all of a sudden they scattered because they got called home, and I was standing there in the almost dark, gray skies, snow everywhere, cold, miserable, and I looked up at the sky and I said, "I hate winter." With everything in me, I shouted that. When I was writing the book and writing that story, I realized, if you remember early in our conversation, I said that maple tree was a safe place for me because I could hide up there. In the winter, I had no hiding place. I was stuck in the house with her all the time. And once that realization came, I think that was a whole box of Kleenex that day. But once I had that understanding, now when winter comes, it's just another season. I'm a Canadian. I can handle it. It's good. I go out walking in the snow. Winter is beautiful. How huge a difference that made in my life, having that awareness. It was tremendous. And there were many other things like that, but that was a huge one.
I can imagine. Tell me, if you would, Sheila, about some of the experiences you had after the book was completed and out, of people that were in the process of going through their own experience that were able to connect with you. What were some of those conversations and interactions like?
Very interesting. I had several book signings at both chapters here in London. Chapters North was where I actually launched the book, and I don't know if I still hold the record, but at that time I had the record for selling the most self-published author books in one day, and that was 45 in one day. Yeah. But at every signing, there would be people come in, and me, I just recognized, there was something about them. I knew that they had been through a similar type of journey. And so I'm very sensitive to that. I don't want to center people out, But people would come and they would talk to me and they would tell me things. And it was amazing. Some of them became clients, and many of them bought the book, and some I never saw again. I mean, it was very interesting. Some people, another interesting thing too was I have one of those, big stand-up banners, whatever you call them, right? And it was the cover of the book. So people will come in the front door of chapters, especially if they have children with them. And, they look at you and they smile, and then they look at your banner and they see childhood abuse, and then they gone. They go down another aisle, dragging the poor child with them. And I think, oh, please come talk to me, and just, don't be afraid of this, because as long childhood, especially sexual abuse of children, happens in secrecy and then in the dark. And perpetrators often instill fear in the child. If you tell, don't you tell, all that kind of stuff. And so as long as we as a society want to keep it secret and in the dark, guess where it's going to continue to happen to more and more children? We have to bring it out. We have to shake it out in the sunlight and talk about it, so that we can begin to help stop it.
That's very well said, which probably leads me into the kinds of observations that you would have as ultimately in a life coach role.
Yes.
To be able to get people to see things in an effective manner such as that. So with the time that we've got left here, can we transition over to that? Let's talk a little bit about how the life coaching evolved. Yeah,
the life coaching. So it was December of 2010, and I had got one of those books from UWO, the continuing studies, and I was flipping through, and it said life coaching. And I started to look into it and investigate, and I thought, yeah, okay. So it was through Adler International in Toronto, but they were offering it here in London at Citibank Plaza where the UWO offices are there. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll sign up. I did, and I took the first full week of foundations. One of the people, the instructor and I have remained very close friends, and she was my mentor coach through my practicum. But the president of Adler International in Toronto was one of my classmates. She was just there because she wanted to refresh. And during the week, there's a lot of theory that you have to learn and get to be comfortable with, but there's also a lot of opportunities to practice, to coach and be coached. And this one session I was in with her, and her name is Linda, and I had coached her, and she had an amazing revelation which stunned me. Whoa, there's a lot of power in this coaching, that you can help people discover things about themselves. It was just mind-blowing. And then another day she coached me, and she looked at me and she said, "Sheila, do you have any idea of your own magnificence?" My jaw dropped to the floor. I was stunned. It took a while to digest that. She ended off the session by giving me one of the best hugs I've ever had in my life, and she said, "You think about that. You are magnificent. You go. You go, girl." And I never took that as in a, "Oh, well, aren't I special? Aren't I wonderful?" No, it's, every single one of us is magnificent. Maybe there are some layers of crust that we need to chip off. We all have those to some degree. Some layers are heavier than others. But we're all magnificent in our own way. And so that fed me. So I said, okay, I'm going for week 2 and week 3. So there are 3 basic weeks. There's the foundations of coaching, and then there's coaching in the context of work. And then there's artful coaching, which is a lot to do with, how to use tools and be responsive to your clients and all that kind of thing. I finished all of that, and then I took some extra training, so I'm qualified to work with either corporate intact teams, which is not really where I want to be, or families, which is where I can be very effective. And then I did practicum, and practicum was about a 10, 11-month process. It was very hard, but we all got through it. I had a class of 9 of us, and we became very close through the process. And once that was over, then I wrote my exam through the International Coach Federation, which is the governing body for coaches worldwide, and passed with, I think it was like 83% or something. I was thrilled with that. And so now I'm working along to the next step.
So what's a day in the life of a life coach like?
Everyone's different, because every client is different.
Sure.
Right? So it's about making sure the space is safe for them. And I always stand, when they come in, I always stand to the side, and I say, "I would like you to sit wherever you would be most comfortable." So they have several choices, and I allow them. I don't stand in front of one particular chair or anything like, this is my territory. I let them sit where they want to sit, where they're comfortable. And one fella who was a client, he came almost for a whole year. He came and he said, "Do you have a kitchen table?" And I said, "Yeah." "Well, that's where I'd like to sit." "Great." So that's where we sat. It was actually dining room, but that's where we sat. So it's about making the space comfortable for them. And then the coaching, your focus is 100% on your client, or needs to be on your client. What's going on for them, reading between the lines, being responsive to them, feeding back what they give you, sometimes reframing it.
How do you, I apologize if this is a naive question. I'm not sure if that's even the right word to put it, but just an ignorant question. How do you connect with people, or how do they find you?
Oh, the miracles of life. I said some came through, they met me at book signings. I've had a couple referred to me by psychologists because they essentially got as far as they could get with that particular client, those particular clients. It was because they didn't have the lived experience, and those clients happened to be about abuse in childhood. And when that's the issue that people come with, they sense immediately, they feel safe with me. They know that's my background, and they feel safe with me. And, you hear some pretty horrendous stuff sometimes. So my job is not to get caught up in that. My job is not to be invested in the outcome. My job is to help them to journey through and get to where they need to be. I've also had a couple of clients who've come who... the terminology I used was they were spinning. They couldn't get grounded. They couldn't get focused. They just wanted to get everything fixed all at once. And through a conversation, they came to understand that they needed to go back into therapy. And they both did. And when they were finished with therapy, they came back into coaching. So it's my job is to learn the stuff and live the stuff and then just be there for the clients.
It sounds fulfilling. And so back to where we started, you described yourself as in a good place and experiencing joy almost daily.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a pretty good place to be.
It is. Yeah.
So what's next?
What's next? Well, more coaching. I'd love to do that forever, because I see what the changes it makes in people's lives.
Sure.
And it's huge, right? And I mean, it's not my doing. I'm not telling people what to do. I'm there reflecting back to them who they are, but maybe on a different plane that they have not been aware of. And it's just an amazing process, absolutely amazing. And I also want to do more writing. I've got 2 books currently that I'm working on. Life often gets in the way. I'm not I don't know who it was, a famous author who sells millions of books, who said you have to discipline yourself. You have to get up every morning. You have to go to your pad and paper or your typewriter or whatever, your laptop, and you have to spend the first hour of your day writing. That's not me. That doesn't work for me. I need a full day, preferably a whole week, that I can just dive in and just immerse myself in there. Just my laptop with my thesaurus on the side and go, girl. Yeah, that's how I write. And so I'm hoping that time comes up again soon.
Well, when you've got things that are having you dipping into that well of creativity, that's always a good place to be. And I think the consistent thing that I keep hearing through all the points of your journey is you're connecting with people and staying in touch with, you said love carried you through the really difficult first part of your life. And it's propelling you through this part as well. It's just continuing to morph and evolve and change. And as you've told some of the stories, I'm reminded of what we were chatting about before we turned the microphones on, about when you and I crossed paths. And we weren't even really sure of how exactly it was that we got introduced. We just kind of knew that we liked each other.
Yeah.
And so I think that you can pick up on those energies. So I'm thrilled for you, and I really appreciate this time, and I wish you all of the best of success. I'm here to help however I can. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's been a joy to just spend time with you today.
Yeah, likewise.
And I thank you for inviting me to take part. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I encourage you to connect with Sheila at SheilaStevensonGroup.com. That's her main website. Her last name, by the way, is spelled Stevенson. SheilaStevensonGroup.com. And as I said at the outset, if you or someone you know has been struggling or have struggled in your past with some of the things that Sheila spoke about, for goodness sake, reach out and connect with Sheila. She will be such a positive voice, and I know that she can help you, and I know she would be happy to be able to do that for you as well. You can connect with her on Twitter. Her handle there is Sheila S. Group, Sheila S. Group on Twitter. And on Facebook, look for the Sheila Stevenson Group, and you'll find a page up there as well if you'd like to connect with her on social media. So go look her up, say hello. By all means, as I say, if you know someone who has struggled or is struggling with a history of abuse, Sheila will be a kind and caring and invaluable resource for you. I'd love to hear from you too. Slide by noscheduleman.com. That's the main hub for all things I'm up to. I'd love for you to sign up to be a new No Schedule Man email VIP. You can do that at noscheduleman.com/email VIP. And if you're interested in the law of attraction and or rock and roll, have a look at my rock band bucket list project at mutineerband.com. If you would, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, rate it and review it if you can, or leave a comment on the YouTube feed. It all helps at youtube.com/NoScheduleMan. Thanks again for spending some time with me. We'll catch you next time on the No Schedule Man podcast.
Just a little deja vu.